Greetings, people. It's Paul at Greenshire Homestead. Going to talk to you this morning about free range versus confined chickens. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that free range chickens is our best case scenario, but it's just not always a good option. This is our coop. Our confinement here. We used to have free range chickens. We don't anymore, and predators was our problem. I put this coop where I did. It might seem a little strange that it's sitting in the middle of the backyard rather than off to the side somewhere, but I did that by design because a predator will always measure the risk for the reward. This coop is about 60 yards from that timber. It's about 100 yards from that timber. And at night, which is generally when you're going to lose your chickens, the coons and the coyotes and the bobcats and the different things that like to eat chickens are going to be out there in the timber, and they're going to be looking over here at this coop knowing that the hens are here. But they've got to cross a lot of open ground to get to it, and once they get to it, they've still got to work to try and get in it. Now, if I'm not in bed, and I'm up and paying attention, that's an easy target. I'm going to take them out with the 22. I've got a pit bull that runs this property, and that pit bull absolutely hates coyotes. That's its number one thing it likes to go after is coyotes. She'll hear them yip, and then she takes off. And she has come back with her. She's a black and white dog. She has come back with blood all over her chest and her head, where I know she's gotten into a coyote, and she doesn't have any wounds, at least nothing substantial. So I know that blood is from that coyote, and they don't come around much anymore. And same with the coons. She's cleaned those coons out pretty well. But she sleeps in this shop right here. Got a dog house in there for her, and this dog door is right here on this side. So if anything's out here and she gets a whiff of it or she hears it, she's coming out that door, and that door's about 20 yards from this coop, and she is going to be all over whatever's come in here to try to get these chickens. And they've realized that, so that's why I put it where I did, just because I know that those predators are going to have a very difficult time crossing all that open ground and then screwing around with this trying to get in. If I put it on the edge of the timber, it would probably look a little nicer, and it'd be easier to keep clean, because it's a pain in the ass having to run the string trimmer and the push mower around this thing, trying to, kind of keep it looking tidy. Whereas if it was over on the edge of the timber, I wouldn't have to do that so much, just a little bit here and there. So that's why it is where it is. The other problem, when you have your free-range chickens, they like to go in the timber. Okay, which is a problem because that's where the predators are too, but they're just during the daytime. So, for a while we did okay. The only problem with them being out in the timber though is they were starting to lay their eggs out there, because that, like I said, it's 60 yards from the timber to this coop. So they're already in the timber. They were happy and enjoying their time. So they started laying their eggs out there rather than coming back to the coop and laying them in here. Well, fortunately, chickens like to lay their eggs kind of in the same cluster, so I probably found 85 to 90% of the eggs, because I paid attention to where the chickens were, and they'd go back to the same area all the time and lay their eggs. So I just have to go out there and find that clutch and bring it in. But I know that they were out there dropping them just here and there as well, and that's a problem for your predators as well, because if the coons and the coyotes are out there and the bobcats are finding eggs laying around and eating them, well, you've just increased their incentive for coming around your area looking for eggs, not just the chickens, but for the eggs. So that became a problem too. And then the other problem is I've got all these beds around here that I keep very thoroughly mulched with shredded leaves, hay, and shredded bark and that sort of thing. Well, that's a very good thing for the chickens to scratch around in. They love scratching around in that stuff because there's worms and bugs and stuff, which is why I use it, because it keeps the soil healthy. Well, they're in there scratching around at this, throwing it all out in the grass, and I'm spending time having to put it back in. So they're throwing it out, I'm putting it in. It was a big pain in the ass, but I figured, well, that's homesteading. If you're going to have free-range chickens, it's one of those things you got to do. So, I just sucked it up and dealt with it. But when we started losing 1 or 2 hens a week, that became a serious problem. We got down to 1 hen. I mean, I felt sorry for the old girl. I come out here to close up the coop in the evening, because when it was evening time, they'd come out of the timber, they'd come over here. There's an entrance on the back side of this on the bottom. You can't see it in the video, but they come through that entrance and they go up the ramp through a hole in the floor, and then they're in the coop. Well, I come out here one night and there's just one poor old girl there all by herself. I mean, it was pathetic, and I felt bad for her because we had lost 2 that day. And so we eventually went to a buddy, and we got 5 or 6 hens from him, and full-grown hens, and so now she's got a flock to run with again. But I said, that's it, we're done with the free-range chickens. So I built a confinement. I'll show you the inside of the coop here real quick. This we do what's called a deep litter system, and that's all this debris you see here on the floor. All that is hay and chicken manure. There's the plywood there, the plywood base, so you can see how deep that is. About every 6 months I'll come in here and clean that out, and all it is well, you can see there's some feathers too, but it's chicken manure and hay, and I throw that in the garden. Wonderful byproduct for the garden. If we just cleaned it out every week or two, you see that poop sitting on the box there. That's what the hens would be walking in, and that's not good for them to walk in that. When you have the deep litter, see that the new feces that they're dropping mixes in with the deep litter and the hay, and it doesn't stick to their feet, and it helps to dry it out better. So this is actually a healthier way for the chickens to live. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it is. And then after I clean this out every 6 months or so, I'll put a thick layer of hay in there, so that will have the same effect. The new feces will drop into the thick layer of hay. It'll absorb the moisture, and it'll keep it from getting stuck to the chicken's feet. And then eventually that hay will break down, and we'll have this same product about every 6 months. So then we've got the 2x4s laid on their side. That's where they roost at night. We have no heating element. We have no light in here at all whatsoever. The only light coming in is through the windows. I keep those closed this time of the year, but when it's warmer out, I just prop them open, and there's plenty of air circulation. You don't need to keep your chickens, a heater in here for the chickens. Last winter we were down at -20 and 30 for several days. We had a pretty rough winter, and as long as the chickens aren't wet, they're not getting wet, the rain can't and the snow can't get in at them, and the wind doesn't blow on them, they're just fine. So this keeps the wind off them, and it keeps them dry, and that's all that they need. The only heating thing that I put in here is this old dog bowl, and that's their water. I set it up on bricks, and the only reason it's on the bricks was just to raise it up a little bit, so when they're in here scratching around at the floor, they don't throw the debris into the water bowl. Right here in this little hole, I run an extension cord from my shop up here, and then I put a little heating element in the water, and that just keeps it from freezing. And that's the only heat that goes in here at all whatsoever. So, and I put you're going to want to put some chicken netting up on your windows to keep the hens from getting out when the windows are open, because they will jump right out there, and because they prefer to be free range. They want to get off in that timber. But like I said, in order to keep the hens safe, we've opted to keep them confined. Now in this confinement, I've put the hay on the ground, and that hay used to be very thick. They've done a very good job of breaking that down. They get in there and they scratch around like you can see they're doing right now, and the hay is good for the ground, but it's also gives the hens something to play with and to look for. And when they break that down, and they've been pooping in it and breaking it down, then I go put it in the garden as mulch. And this will probably be ready to be taken out of there in about 2 or 3 weeks. It's pretty well broken down now. And once I take that out, then I'll go back and put new hay in there, and I'll pile it up real high, and have a real thick layer of hay in there. And they just love it, because once you confine your chickens, you're going to lose the grass. There used to be grass in here. It takes about a year or two, and your grass will be completely gone. So you want to put something down like that they can play with, and hay is your best option there. I also put these stumps in there. They like to get around the stumps and climb on the stumps, and act like chickens. So that is what we have elected to do. This is chicken wire here on the bottom, and this stuff here on the top, this is deer fence. This is just like a nylon material. I could easily put my hand through that. the only reason this is here is to keep the hens from flying out over the chicken wire. The chicken wire is to keep the coons and the coyotes out. Now they can eventually get through that, but like I said, with that pit bull out here running around, if a coyote or a coon was out here trying to screw with this chicken wire, that pit bull would either run them off or kill them, one of the two. And then over the top here, you can see I don't have this covered because the expense that would incur from putting the chicken wire over there, plus the snow, even though the chicken wire doesn't have a lot of surface area, the snow will stick to it and eventually start pushing down on it. So I've got this, those orange cords you can see there, that is baling twine, and it is UV protected, so that'll last about 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years before it'll start to dry out and deteriorate. I put that across the top because that keeps the hawks and the owls from flying in. You can see how I've got that in there. There's not a lot of it, but the hawk and the owl will see that, and they don't know what it is, and they don't want to risk breaking a wing or hurting a wing, so they don't even come anywhere near this thing. They fly over the top of it. They don't know what that is, so they won't. Again, they're going to measure the risk for the reward, and they're going to move on to an easier target. So that's why we've got this set up the way we do. It's working real well for us. We've had this system in place for about 2 years now. Haven't lost a single hen since we got it in place. Everything's been working real well. And I think we've got a good solution. Eventually we're going to be putting in a mini barn because we're going to be getting goats and turkeys. And that mini barn's going to go yonder a little ways, and we're going to fence off about 2 acres for the goats. And then the chickens will be back in there with the turkeys and the goats, because there's going to be a Great Pyrenees running around with them, and that Great Pyrenees is then going to work to keep the coyotes and the coons away. And having the Pyrenees and the goats in there, the raptors, the hawks and the owls aren't going to want to fly down into that yard with the goats and the Pyrenees there. So this will all come down, and I'll replant grass here, but and then down over there by my greenhouse is where the goats will be. So this is going to be our chicken confinement for now, and it's working real good for us. So Paul at Greenshire Homestead, I wish you the greatest of luck with your chickens. I'm going to do some other videos on how to worm chickens, how we feed our chickens, and some other things like that, but this is just a video on why we keep them confined. So you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. We'll see you next time at Greenshire Homestead.